I think there's all different kinds of exercise. So you're talking about getting the heart rate up, and I know there's a lot of data that shows that, but I think there's also data that shows that there's something called heart rate variability. So heart rate variability is how your heart rate fluctuates throughout the day. And what that is a marker for is something called sympathetic tone. So what does that mean? You know your fight or flight response? So if your fight or flight response is healthy, what will happen is when you have a threat, your heart rate will go up and all the other things will happen. Your pupils will dilate, blood will rush into your muscles, and you'll be ready for action. And then when the threat goes away, you'll be able to relax and everything will come back down. But what happens is because we're in such an overstimulated society, many of us we're on alert all the time. I like to say we're all in hyperdrive. So what happens is you have very little heart rate variability. So why I'm saying that is because the exercise does something to help that. Because you start to get your heart rate up and you get it up in a certain way. So you were talking about how your heart rate drops very quickly, which is a great quality because then you can tell your wife that, my heart rate slows down faster than yours.
Right now.
You should, because it's called cardiac reserve. So that's something called cardiac reserve. And so probably a half hour a few times a week is reasonable. I would say half hour every day. I'm like Mike. I would say, the more you can do, the better. You don't necessarily have to overdo it. In fact, you shouldn't overdo it because what happens is if you over-exercise, you get an inflammatory response that's actually detrimental. So when people are running marathons, they're not necessarily healthy. They may be physically fit. Does that make sense? Because people die at the finish line. We find people that have been training for a marathon for months, weeks, and maybe it's their 5th or 10th marathon, and they drop dead at the finish line. So are they healthy or are they fit? So there's a difference between fitness and health. So if you can do a half hour a day, I think that's more than enough. But also I would add on to that is you want to do something else, some sort of a relaxation technique, some sort of a heart resonating technique or heart synchronization technique where perhaps you put your hand on your heart and you just feel your heartbeat. And then you start to think good thoughts. Remember like the happiest event in your life. And try to conjure that up and start to make it so that your heart rate, you get this heart rate variability, which is a very healthy property to do.